Welcome back to the channel. This is Gabriel Leung talking about visual language and photography, a channel that we use a mentorship style approach that empowers everyone to improve your work and creativity with simple art vocabularies, linking the relationship between photography, art, and design. Now today we have something special, a very common word in photography, even your phone has that function, and that is contrast. What exactly goes on beyond the surface, underneath the secret of the psychology that we react to when we see a high or low contrast image? This video will give beginners a strong understanding of contrast and more advanced learners out there an eye-opening way of looking at contrast like never before. So buckle up and enjoy the ride. We would all probably be lost without contrast. We differentiate this from that with contrast since we were a newborn. And contrast is such a broad topic, and we might have to eventually do a sequel of videos on this topic. There's contrast of light and dark, there's contrast of subject matter, there's contrast of colors, of scale, of texture, etc., etc. For the question today, we want to ask what really goes on behind adding or subtracting contrast. From previous episodes, we looked at vocabularies dealing with concepts in relation to image composition. For visual contrast, it's more about image quality. Now, contrast actually brings our attention to a particular area. It is instinctive. We see contrast and it impacts us straight away. Contrast heightens the appearance of a photograph, its emotion, and also clarifies the message. Seeing the stars shining at night reminds us of the darkest void in the night sky. The same way with black ink reinforces the brightness of a white piece of paper, a thin curved line against a thick straight line, or intense color within an area of muted tones. Today we will mainly focus on contrast, as it referred to as the variation of light and dark within an image. So you know the drill. Let's go through 3+1 tips to understand contrast beyond the surface. Tip number 1, transition. Between the brightest and the darkest area, there are countless tones that gradually changes within an image. Now, what contrast controls is the proportioning of those dark and bright elements within the picture frame. The higher the contrast, there are actually less transitional tones between the brightest part and the darkest part, which also means less information for us to read into an image, less details that we can understand logically. The lower the contrast, it actually has more transitional tones between the brightest and the darkest point, which also means there are more information and more details for us to read logically, and more cognitive activity within us is involved. To simplify, contrast actually reduces the transitional tones, which also means reduces information and details within an image. Tip number 2, drama. By increasing the contrast of an image, it heightens the differences between things, emphasizing what strikes to be dissimilar. By intensifying this effect, the viewer's attention towards that area will also increase respectively. It's like a scream punctuating through silence. It clarifies what is really worth our attention within the frame. It heightens the area that we should really be looking at and how we should really be reacting towards, and also how we should really be offering our time and also emotional investment in for exchange for dramatic experiences. It's also like how we talk about a drama queen or drama king. They are usually attention seekers. Now, contrast actually acts quite similar for good, bad, or neutral reasons. Tip number 3, shadow poetry. One of the greatest weapons when utilizing contrast is the presence of shadow. It heightens the bright side like black ink on white paper, which we said before, but it does something more. It appears to imply change and differences. It shows up in an image as transitory. It emerges from the dark. It adds poetry and sometimes mystery to an image or a scene. If we look at the study of shadow in human history, it dates way back to Plato's cave allegory, where people are stuck in a cave and they mistaken shadow as the real thing. So shadow were said to be emotional feelings and opinions instead of true knowledge. And over time, shadow has also thought to be a way to access the human psyche and the unconscious emotions within a person. Whichever it may be, within the darkest void of shadow lies poetry. It stirs our emotion and it provokes our imagination towards an image. If you are finding value in this video so far, I would appreciate if you can just tell YouTube that you like this video by hitting the button, and consider subscribing if this really helps you along the way. So moving on to the +1 tip. Use contrast for the right intention. Be aware of the photographs and your audience's context, cultural background, and also the time in history, and apply just the right amount that you need for that particular subject matter. Let's say for people, objects, or a scene. Be sensible about it. Sometimes it is the silence that captures our attention after a massive explosion. So here's the take-home tip, something a bit more practical in relation to the concept we spoke about, and that is the quarter and the three-quarter tones. It also refers to as the highlight and the shadow details. Now what it really means is the information lies within those areas. Let's say the texture on a white wall and retaining those textures or eliminating it. The decision about choosing to preserve that person walking in the shadow underneath the bridge or actually eliminating that area and turning it all to black. It's a creative decision making. It all depends on the notion of your photograph, how you want to present it, and how you would like your audience to react to that story. The more information, the more we learn about the story. The less information, the less we learn, but the more emotional involvement, the more imagination space is introduced into the frame. A quick recap on the 3 tips about contrast is transition, drama, and shadow poetry. So a great way to make sure that you have benefited from learning the effect of contrast is to take a photo walk. The same exact route on a sunny day and also a cloudy overcast day. Go back, review your photos, compare them, and notice how your emotions and your feelings changes when you look at the 2 different days of results. Okay, questions and observations, leave a comment down below. If you have more private questions to ask me, you can also DM me through Instagram, which some of you had already done so. Now, if you're down for some more, here are 2 topics that I highly recommend you watching next. I'll see you over there.